Thank you, and apologies for the belated start. I'm a substitute chair tonight, and I'm sure the committee will share me in passing on our best wishes to Councillor Dennis, who's feeling poorly tonight. And as I say, apologies for the slow start. I had technical problems, as you probably gathered from my panicked attempts to get it working. I'd like to welcome everyone, to the members, officers, members of the public, to this meeting of the Planning Control Committee. I would particularly like to thank the members of the public who taken the trouble to come in, and you'll be listened to as appropriate. I'd also like to I'm very, very proud to be the first person to welcome Nova Billing to this council chamber. I hope to see Nova grow up to be the fourth generation of Billing to be in this chamber, but for now, just welcome to see. It's lovely to see her. Before the meeting starts, I'd like to invite the committee clerk, Chanel Wickenham, to explain how proceedings will work.
Thank you. Rules of debate. If members wish to speak, they should use the speak button located on their microphone unit. The microphone will light up green and the chair will be alerted to your request to speak. When the chair invites you to speak, your microphone will be made live and will turn red, at which point you can speak. When the public participants are invited to speak, their microphones will be made live by the committee officer. When requested to vote, voting will be via the yes, no, abstain buttons on your microphone unit. Details of how members voted will be shown on the screens around the room, and the result will be visible on the YouTube stream. In the event of a tied vote, the chair will have the casting vote. Are there any more questions before we start the meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. I have received apologies from Councillor Elizabeth Dennis. Are there any further apologies? No, thank you. Item 2, minutes of the meetings of the 10th of October 2024 and the 24th of October 2024. I propose that we take as read and approve the minutes of the meetings held on the 10th of October 2024 and 24th of October 2024 as a true record of the proceedings. May I have a seconder? Councillor Mantle, I think, got there first. Thank you. Any comments? Any comments on the minutes? No? Right. Chanel. So do we? Yeah. Go to the vote? Yes.
Sorry.
So I could see those in favour of approving the minutes of the 2 meetings.
Chair, the motion is carried.
Thank you. Item 3, notification of other business. There has been none. Item 4, chair's announcements. 1, recording. In accordance with the council policy, this meeting is being recorded. The recording will be available both on the council's YouTube channel as well as on the council's ModGov site alongside the documents from this meeting. Assuming you have more luck getting into it than I did. 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded to make declarations of interest before an item. The detailed reminder about how to do this and speaking rights is set out under the chair's announcements on the agenda. 3, to clarify matters for the registered speakers. Members of the public in groups of supporters or objectors have up to 3 minutes per person. Where there is only one public supporter or objector, then that member of the public will have up to 5 minutes. Okay. There are separate groups for people registered as member advocate objectors, who will be councillors, member advocate supporters, and for the applicant, their agents or representatives. This is up to 5 minutes per group. All speakers will receive a warning when you have 1 minute remaining. Following the conclusion of your time, members will be invited to ask points of clarification. At the end of your allotted time, you'll be advised that the time allowed has ended and you must cease. I will give you a warning before the end. I'm conscious I didn't read that terribly well. So if any of the public speakers have any questions on that, please, you can ask me now or ask at the time if you're not sure how long you have. Okay. And you will see the clocks on the screen that will count down. It's not too bad. It's not like that game show. You're fine. Well, that I can't answer. Thank you. Section 4.8.23a. For the purpose of clarification, in order to vote on an agenda item at this meeting, a member must be present for the entirety of the debate and consideration for that item. If a member leaves the room at any point of the item, they will not be able to vote. 5, public participation. Right, the names I have listed are Davina Malcolm. Thank you. Councillor Rolf Muntzer. I know you, Rolf. Paul Hunter. Thank you. Aaron Breeden. Daniel Stokes. Cool. And Lindsay Rigg. Lovely. Did I miss anyone? Lovely. So item 6 is questions from members of the council. Can I invite Councillor Rolf Muntzer to put the following question? Do I read the question or does Councillor Muntzer? Sorry.
Marvellous. Thank you very much. My question is, what is the Council's policy regarding the application of its powers under the Listed Building Act of 1990, the Town and Country Planning Act of 1990, and the Buildings Act of 1984 in respect of holding building owners to account for the dilapidation of listed buildings, especially for registered assets of community value?
Thank you very much, Councillor Muntzer. Which officer would like to step up? Sean.
The council don't have an adopted policy as such. We apply the relevant acts based upon basic government guidance. As far as the the Buildings Act's concerned, that's a matter for building regulations, and it's not a matter for me to comment upon. And building regulations deal with dilapidation of buildings generally. With regards to listed buildings, as I said earlier, we don't have a policy on such matters, but we do follow government guidance. There's no specific duty on owners to keep their buildings in a good state or repair, but we do have powers to take action where a designated heritage asset has deteriorated to the extent that its preservation may be at risk. And there are various notices that we can use under the Listed Building and Conservation Area Act. Section 54 and 55 deal with urgent works to buildings, but that can only apply to an unoccupied building or parts of a building that is unoccupied. And then there's the repairs notice under Section 48 of the Town and Country Planning Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act, and that can relate to listed buildings which are occupied, and we can serve a repairs notice on the owner in regards to those. The notice must specify the works which the authority considers reasonably necessary for the proper preservation of a building. It doesn't deal with the restoration of a building, it just deals with its preservation. And therefore, the requirements of such a notice can only deal with buildings that are in such a state that the preservation is at risk. And the works that we can require are to bring it to a point where it's no longer at such risk. We can't require its restoration to a much better state than that which is just required to ensure basically it doesn't fall down. There is the ability to compulsory purchase a listed building. That's outside my purview and my delegated powers, and that would be a matter for others at the council. You asked the question about registered assets of community value. Those have no relevance to the Listed Buildings Act and to whether something is a listed building. Assets of community value are assets where communities have the right to identify a building or other land that they believe to be important to the community. And it really only deals with the ability of of the community to purchase a building, and they can only apply that ability in the event that a building is put up for sale. So it doesn't really relate necessarily to listed buildings as such, but to buildings where the community consider it's an asset and should be given an opportunity to purchase that building in the event that it comes up for sale. An asset lasts, I believe, 5 years on a list before it has to be reviewed. Unless you've got any further.
I'm going to assume it's like a normal council meeting, Chair, where I'm able to have a supplementary.
Sorry. Yeah. Yes, Councillor Munster, I was about to invite you. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do. And I thank Mr. Greaves for providing this response to the committee and to myself. And I, of course, note that there is no current policy within this authority when dealing with such matters. To the best of your knowledge, are there any plans to bring forward a policy to codify the enforcement approach in North Hertfordshire?
No, there aren't. The main reason for that is that the approach taken is very much dependent upon the particular building concerned. All listed buildings are very different, and therefore we apply the law, the acts, based upon the particular circumstances of each case. I'm not sure that a policy would particularly be beneficial in that regard, because each case is dealt with individually.
Thank you.
Councillor Munster, second question.
I do indeed, Chair. Thank you. Thank you. If the council becomes aware that a listed building or building within a conservation area is at risk of dilapidation, to what extent will the council allow the building to deteriorate before exercising its power to take formal legal action under the above acts?
I can do that, yes. As I said earlier, that would very much depend on the particular circumstances of the building, and certain buildings would be looked at on their own merits, and we would normally undertake or commission a survey to be undertaken if we consider that a building has reached such a point where it's in danger of failing, if it's a listed building, with the view to preserving that building and stopping it from falling down, basically.
Thank you. Do you have a supplementary question?
I do,
Councillor
Chair.
Munster.
Thank you very much. Within the last civic year, do you know how many cases of formal legal action were brought against owners of property under the above acts?
We haven't had any.
Thank you.
Third question.
I do indeed,
Please
Chair.
go ahead.
The final one, thank you. If the owner's maintenance of a listed building falls below the council's minimum standard requirement, as in question 2 above, and indeed the minimum standard required by legislation, how much time will the council give the owner to restore the building to comply with informal requests and comply with statutory requirements before taking formal legal action to protect a historic building?
My answer will be similar to the last one. It would depend upon the particular building concerned, the degree of its state in terms of what's necessary to preserve it, and that will reflect the amount of work involved in its repair to a point where it can be preserved, and therefore it's not possible to say what specific time period we would give. It would depend upon the particular building and its state.
You have a supplementary.
I do indeed. I of course note that we need to deal with cases, and the council needs to deal with cases on a case-by-case basis. But in your experience, Mr. Greaves, what is the average time?
I wouldn't be able to. I wouldn't want to hazard a guess as to an average time. They are quite rare, and so working out an average would be quite difficult because they are such rare occurrences.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Munster, for the questions, and Mr. Greaves for answering. Okay. Item 7. So we move on to item 7, which is Planning application 22-02675 FP, Kimpton Grange, Luton Road, Kimpton Hitchin, SG4 8HA. And I believe Ben Glover will present.
Yep. Thank you, Chair. So I have one point of clarification just on the officer reports. You'll notice on the applicant section, it shows Clear Architects as the applicant. Just to clarify, the applicant is Mr. J. Grint and Clear Architects are the agent for the site. So if we go on to presentation. Thank you. So this is an application that consists of the conversion of the lodge into 6 apartments, the erection of 4 terraced 2-bed dwellings, the erection of 5 detached dwellings, landscaping and parking, and also alterations to an existing access and the creation of an additional access to the south of the site. So the image in front of you now is just the site as it exists. That's the photos, please. There are quite a few photos and plans to go through, so if members would like to see them again, just perhaps make note of which ones you want to see, and we can cycle back when we need to. So this is the photo of the lodge, taken from this is kind of the west elevation. So the next one, please. Again, so I'm in one of the gardens to the west of the site, looking at the lodge. This is one of the other gardens where it contains much of the kind of existing outbuildings, greenhouses, etc. Again, a photo of the greenhouse area of the site. It's looking southwest. So this photo looking again southwest across the lake. It's within the site. Now we're looking south across the lake. So now towards the southern side of the sites, on the right side there, you have the kind of closed off access. And then on the left, you have the kind of area of trees where the 4 terrace properties are proposed. So again, looking at that treed area, this is where the 4 properties are proposed to the south of the site. Bit of a closer look at the access to the south. So this is a photo of the existing barn that's more towards the north of the site. Again, you've got the barn on the left and you've got the existing cottages just behind. So this is the existing access to the north of the site, and that building there is a neighbouring property. Now we're on Cooper's Hill, looking at the south of the site. So you can see the southern access there in the middle of the photograph, and there's some properties along Kimpton Bottoms there on the left. A closer look at the southern access. Some bit further east now. This is the southern boundary. Across the road is the southern boundary of the site, giving a bit of context as to where those 4 properties are proposed. So a bit further up Cooper's Hill. Again, looking at that same boundary on the south there on the far side of the road. So still south of the site, these are existing properties along Kimpton Bottom. And then we're onto the plans. So this is the existing site plan. This is the proposed site plan. But this, I should note that this slide also includes, it's coloured. So it shows the area of land to be gifted to the parish council. And also in green is parts of the land to be gifted to neighbouring properties for use as residential gardens. This is a side-by-side existing and proposed site plan. This is a coloured master plan for the site. So just a bit more context for zooming in on parts of the site. These are landscape plans, but they just give a bit more details to what's going on. So this is shows the existing cottages to the north there at the top, and then the lodge. It's a large building in the middle. These are the two single-story dwellings, garden house and greenhouse, along with associated parking and landscaping. These are the 3 lake houses. And then the 4 terrace properties to the south of the site. And then an existing and proposed street scene. Here we have the proposed west and south elevation of the lodge. The north and east elevation of the lodge again. Here we have the ground floor plan of the lodge. Just to note that the lodge has been turned into 6 apartments. Here we have the basement, 1st floor and 2nd floor plans. And on to the proposed garden house. This is the proposed greenhouse. This is Lake House 1. Proposed plans and elevations. Lake House 2, again, proposed plans and elevations. Lake House 3, plans and elevations. And then the elevations for the 4 terrace units. And then the 1st floor and roof plans for the 4 terrace units. Then finally, we have the trees constraints and protection plan. It sets out the value categories of the trees within the sites and sets out which are to be removed and which are to be protected. Thank you, Chair. Are there any plans I'd like to go back to?
Yeah, sorry. Just before I take questions, thank you for that, Ben. Just for the sake of, I'm conscious we have a lot of members of public here. When I ask for any questions on this, it is just to the planning committee, who are the people in the front row, because it can seem sometimes it can sound like I'm throwing it out to the audience. So just to stress. So did the planning committee have any questions for Ben?
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Can we just go back to the last slide? You very quickly said that that's about the trees, but I didn't know which ones, what the colour codes meant. Which ones are the valuable ones and which ones are the least valuable ones? Please, can you explain? Oh, I have to turn off. No?
So this is the trees that are throughout the whole site. Well, the to be developed part of the sites that will remain outside of the parish council's control. So it's quite hard to tell from screens, but there are small dots within the kind of canopy circles. So green is category A, blue category B, grey is category C, and red is category U. So A down to U is kind of sets out what level of value they have, U being lowest, A being greatest.
Thank you.
I have Councillor Tyson has a question.
Thanks, Ben. Could we just see the slide with the street elevations with the 4 cottages?
Yep.
And current and proposed. Thank you. No, I didn't mean that one.
Yeah, I'll keep going. I'll say when to stop. That one.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks. I didn't have a question on it. I just wanted to refresh my memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tyson. I've got Councillor Amy Allen next.
Will it be gated?
Yes, it will be gated. So I better just check. See if you see there, the existing street scene shows a gate. The proposed does not. If we go to the, can we go cycle back up to the proposed, the master plan, please, the colour master plan. Have a look. So yeah, the southern access won't be gated. The northern access will be. But just to point out that both north and south are currently gated.
Oh, sorry, they're definitely currently gated. My gated communities comes up a couple of times here, and I understand obviously that's one family's land, and then below the houses are going to be for other people.
So
would this end up? So if there's going to be no gate at the south, does that mean that there's going to be just normal entrance to those houses, the cottages at the bottom?
So yeah, so the southern access has kind of two purposes: one to serve the 4 affordable units, and then to allow access into the land that's been gifted to the parish council.
Okay.
So that, Councillor Louise Peace.
I was just checking the number of affordable units is 4, is that right? But are there 15 dwellings altogether?
15 together, yeah.
15 altogether. So if I've just read the right part of the local plan, that should be 35%.
So there's an existing property on there already, so it's a net gain of 14.
Ah, so it's okay. Thank you. Yes.
Councillor Bryony May.
Yes, thank you. Would you be able to say a bit more about the siting and orientation of the cottages, the 4 affordable houses? Because I think if I've understood it correctly, they're facing inward into the site with their backs along the road. And also, have other locations within the site been considered for those affordable houses?
Yep, so you're right, they are facing north into the sites, and no, these are the as originally proposed.
I am not seeing any other lights. Do any other councillors have any questions to the officer? Tom Tyson.
Thank you. I thought of one now. I'm sure I've read this somewhere. Is there what's the net balance with trees?
I don't have the figure off the top of my head, but I'm fairly certain that there is a gain, a net gain. Yeah.
And is there any conditioning about what kind of, or sort of what maturity of tree will be planted to replace?
So we've not had it included as a condition, but it will be set out within the supplementary documents that we will approve as part of the recommendation.
Okay. Thank you.
Any further questions from the councillors at this stage? No? Okay. In which case, could I ask Davina Malcolm if you would like to speak? Davina, you've got 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you've got a minute to go, and I'll be as gentle as possible, so as not to interrupt your flow.
There are many objections to this latest application from Kimpton Grange raised by members of the public. They have not been adequately addressed. The destruction of a large section of its southeastern woodland boundary would be a tragic act of vandalism. The gifting of land to neighbouring properties and to Kimpton Parish Council passes responsibility for maintenance to them with no guarantees that the land will not be subsequently developed. Kimpton Grange is in the green belt, outside the defined Kimpton Village settlement boundary. According to the National Planning Policy Framework, the essential characteristics of green belts are their openness and their permanence, for the purpose of safeguarding the countryside from encroachment. The site is also in Kimpton Bottom Conservation Area, which according to the District Council's character statement is principally of interest for its preservation of the character of the historic hamlet of Kimpton Bottom. The dominant feature is the wooded boundary. the site does not constitute infilling. Luton Road forms a natural buffer to separate the village from Kimpton Bottom. Currently, leaving Kimpton travelling westward along the High Street, you see only large trees ahead of you. The cottages of Kimpton Bottom are hidden from view round the bend in the road. The proposal states that 4 new affordable homes are to be infilled within the southern boundary. The affordable homes will provide greater iteration with the conservation area. But removing trees and making a continuous line of housing from the north side of the High Street along to the existing cottages in Kimpton Bottom negates the very purpose of the conservation area and its greenbelt status. In accordance with legal precedent, there is a need to assess on the ground whether or not the site appears to be of the village and an infill site. I invite the committee to visit before making a decision. The proposal states that the design of the whole site is exceptional. Kimpton has no identified requirement for 5 new build large houses. It does need affordable housing, but the planned affordable homes are described only as of an acceptable quality. Thus, the site as a whole is not exceptional, and therefore there are no very special circumstances for building in the Greenbelt. The site is parkland, a mixed deciduous woodland supporting a variety of wildlife. The District Council's Sustainability Supplementary Planning document states that it should protect, maintain, and enhance its historic natural environment, avoiding habitat loss. This proposal would introduce significantly more traffic, light, and noise pollution to the detriment of wildlife and biodiversity. In addition, between 32 and 50 mature trees on the site are scheduled for removal for new buildings, roadways, parking, and drainage works. It is proposed that lost woodland along the southern boundary be replaced along the west boundary. Woodland cannot be instantly replaced. Its effectiveness in cleaning the air, providing ecological habitats, water retention, and landscape features take decades to develop. The proposed flood assessment made no mention of extra surface water caused by tree removal, particularly in the lowest area of the site. How quickly might the remarkably precise 51.35% increase in biodiversity
1 minute left.
be realised? Who will be responsible for the long-term maintenance and management of the trees, especially if individual households own the land? Luckily, Kimpton and Kimpton Bottom are surrounded by farms, fields and woods with easy access along public public footpaths. The community does not need the responsibility of maintaining park and woodland, increasing the likelihood for further building to meet future village development plans. This inappropriate development would herald the destruction of this semi-rural area. Please reject it.
Thank you. That was extremely good timekeeping, Davina. Thank you very much. May I ask the members of the committee, do you have any points of clarification, questions from the public speaker? No? In which case, if I can ask the member advocate, Councillor Rolf Muntzer. Rolf, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. And I find myself in a very odd position this evening as an objector, because I wish to first of all commend the applicant for some aspects of the plans and the principles of which are before this committee tonight. In fact, I don't disagree with the proposed conversion of the main house into apartments. It gives a new lease of life into a historic building. Nor do I disagree with the proposed lake houses, of which clearly sustainability has been a key focus for the applicant. However, where I, the parish council, and as you've heard, local residents, disagree with the applicant is the siting of the 4 affordable homes on the southern boundary of the site. And this is what forms the basis of my application, of my objection to this application tonight. As you will no doubt have read in the report, this development is situated not only within the Greenbelt, but also within one of 2 conservation areas in Kimpton and outside of the defined settlement boundary. Therefore, colleagues, your task tonight is to determine whether this application will cause harm to either or the Greenbelt and the conservation area. I would submit to you that the siting of these properties does in fact cause harm to both, and therefore this scheme should be rejected, enabling the developer to identify a less harmful site for the affordable housing and to integrate it better within the overall scheme. Colleagues, you're an experienced committee, but I wish to just remind you of the principles relating to both the Greenbelt and conservation areas. Policy SP5 of the North Hertfordshire Local Plan supports the principles of the Greenbelt and sets out that the council will only permit development in the Greenbelt where it would not result in inappropriate development. Paragraph 152 of the National Planning Policy Framework states that development within the Greenbelt is only permitted where very special circumstances have been demonstrated. Colleagues, I do not believe these very special circumstances have been demonstrated by the applicant in their application. The applicant seeks to argue that this development falls within the infilling exemption. That assertion is incorrect. The proposed scheme is outside of the clearly defined settlement boundary of Kimpton. Kimpton Bottom is distinct from the main village in a number of different ways, including the character and design of development of which is located and situated there. The infilling exemption therefore does not apply, and as I have already remarked, the applicant has failed to demonstrate the special circumstances for development within the Greenbelt. If I turn to the harm caused to the conservation area, within the report, officers have already accepted the development would in fact cause harm to the conservation area, and therefore, as required by Policy 205 of the NPPF, great weight must be attracted to this harm when reaching a decision this evening. The proposal before this committee is not in keeping with the character of the conservation area and would result in the loss of a rookery which adds to the rural character of this community. In the early stages of the application, these concerns were identified and raised by the parish council and myself to the developer in a meeting. It is therefore disappointing the applicant has completely failed to amend these proposals to take into account the concerns of local communities. I know this committee from previous appearances before it is concerned that affordable housing must be integrated within the development. In the plans before you tonight, there is a clear distinction between the affordable housing and the housing for commercial sale. That is not something of which is a policy contained within the local plan. In fact, this committee on a number of occasions have refused and rejected permission on that basis alone. So for the reasons I have set out, the fact that it is development within the Greenbelt and causes harm to the Greenbelt locally in Kimpton, it causes harm to the conservation area in Kimpton, and it is a site not identified within the local plan, nor does it ensure that the affordable housing is integrated fully into the scheme. I would ask and recommend that you refuse permission to this application to allow the developer to go back to the drawing board and address the concerns of local residents. Unless I can be of any further assistance, that concludes my submissions.
Thank you, Councillor Munster. Again, very timely. Can I ask the members of the committee, do you have any questions or clarifications you seek from Councillor Munster? Councillor Tyson.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Munster. I just wanted to clarify that the principle of the 4 cottages cited elsewhere on this land wouldn't be offensive to you. It's the fact that they are visible from the road. Is that correct?
That is
behind
indeed
the 1.8 metre hedge that's proposed.
That is indeed correct, Councillor Tyson. As we've heard, there is a need for more affordable housing in Kimpton and in communities right across North Hertfordshire. It is purely the siting of these these properties. It's a concern, as I stated, the parish council and myself raised with the developer at the time this application was submitted, and unfortunately we have the proposals unamended before you. But no, I'm not objecting to that if they were to be moved to a more appropriate location of which would preserve the character of the conservation area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions to Councillor Munster? No, in which case, if I could call John Hunter. John, you have 5 minutes, and again, I'll let you know you have 1 minute remaining.
Sorry, thank you. It's Paul Hunter, but thank you very much indeed. Thank you for your time as well. Just to say, I have a planned out speech or anything. I'm a neighbour of the property, but at 10 to 5 last night, I felt compelled to sign up and say a piece for the planning, which I'm now clearly in hot water about. But no, it's really from my side. We are a neighbour to the property. We see the property. We moved there approximately sort of 4 years ago, of which time it was quite a splendourous place then. It's with sadness that I see in front of our eyes every day the property is dropping. It is decaying, not as in the property itself. I'm not aware of that, but literally from the grounds that you see. And when we first saw the planning application come through and we looked through it as a family, we were really excited. We thought this really does look something quite special, very unique. I don't think I've seen a development. Kimpton has had developments already which have been applied for, approved and built already. They don't have any of the affordable housing that we're talking about. It is obviously very sensitive to the village of Kimpton, as it's sensitive to us as well. And I felt that it does, because of that specialness of the Grange when it was first built, it would have been lovely to see that come back and to be something that Kimpton could be very proud of. And with the new sides of the gifting, with the woodland, and then people having more access as a public footpath that goes from the north and down, that people would be able to experience it and feel it rather than just seeing the outside of it, because at the moment there is no access within that property at all. So thank you for your time. I kept it very, very short, but literally I did just wanted to say my piece as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. And apologies for the misnaming. Do any members of the committee have any questions for Paul? No? Okay. In which case, I would call the applicant's agent, who's, unless this is incorrect, it's Aaron Breeding.
That's correct.
Correct. Aaron, you also have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when there's a minute remaining.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, councillors. As architects and chartered town planners, we were tasked with bringing Kimpton Grange back into wider use, which led to a re-evaluation of the property and how it can be sensibly configured to secure its future. We developed this plan, which focuses on a holistic approach of energy efficiency, biodiversity net gain, the creation of new homes, and bringing forward public benefits, such as the gifting of a new wild parkland. The scope of the works from our client was to make Kimpton Grange meaningful. We are very proud of our proposal, and we feel covers the set brief and provides meaningful benefits to the community while modestly developing the grounds. We are in a moment of time which requires every aspect of a proposal to work hard for its place, to make efficient use of our resources, and provide fabric first principles to buildings for energy efficiency for future generations. Our proposal goes far beyond the statutory requirements for building regulations and biodiversity net gain. With the proposal being within the Greenbelt, it was important to design to maintain the openness in this location. We feel we have provided an improvement to openness within the Greenbelt through proposing to demolish the large utilitarian barn building and associated outbuildings, which will immediately improve the setting of the lodge and existing cottages. As such, the setting of the lodge and cottages will be enhanced through providing greater separation and space, providing greater openness within this currently cramped section of the grounds, recreating the rural scene of a country house. It is proposed to convert the existing lodge into 6 apartments. This will include the provision of improvements to the building walls and roofs by way of internal insulation, as well as new heritage windows and doors to create a comfortable internal environment. Externally, the building will be refurbished back to its former glory through removing some small extensions which are at odds with the architecture of the building. The proposed new build houses replace the demolished volume with less volume in strategic parts of the garden, using topography off the site to provide well-balanced new homes in defined locations. Our proposed numerical reduction in volume is substantial. The proposed reduction in volume provides a numerical quantification of improvements to the openness of the greenbelt. Openness is further achieved by design. We seek to distribute the demolished volume across the site strategically to create the new homes. The proposal will bring forwards 3 new 1.5-storey new homes to be located around the feature lake. This location was favoured due to being able to nestle the new homes within the existing topography, utilising their built feature of the garden. These new homes are sensitively designed to a high standard, being each of bespoke architecture. Our second grouping is the 2 single-storey homes located within the walled gardens. These new homes have been designed to be integrated into the existing walls to improve openness within the greenbelt. These are bespoke architectural designs. The third series of new homes have been located towards the south boundary to integrate into Kimpton through the continuation of development. These new homes are infilling within the village. A village for the purpose of paragraph 154G does not require denotation of a boundary line, and that has been shown through case law. It needs to relate to the village, which in this instance it does. All new homes, including the conversion of the lodge building, incorporate fabric first principles to reduce energy use. The homes will feature a selection of sustainable technology to further reduce energy, utilising air and ground source heat pumps, solar panels, battery storage systems, high performance windows and doors, green roofs to slow down water drainage, surface water drainage, as part of the overall sustainable underground drainage strategy. Following a request from residents of Kimpton Bottom, the proposal gifts land to these properties to enable them to have rear gardens. These properties currently do not have rear garden spaces. This proposal is a significant improvement to their residential amenity. The proposed affordable housing has been designed in line with the Kimpton neighbourhood plan, which requires 2-bedroom houses. And finally, the project achieves a 51% biodiversity net gain, including a 40% increase of linear habitats, while gifting a new wild parkland to Kimpton. We look forward to your support to enable this wholesome proposal to come forwards. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bang on time, despite me not reminding you had a minute left. Thank you. Can I ask the committee, do you have any questions for Aaron? Yes. Councillor Ryan.
I've got 2 questions. I'll go with the easiest question first. The gifted back gardens, are they for houses immediately outside the site then? Or where are those houses?
Those houses are 2 to 14 Kimpton Bottom. They're directly adjoining the site.
Yes, so they're outside the red line.
The houses are outside the red line, but the garden spaces that have been gifted are inside the red line boundary.
Okay, sorry, I wasn't quite clear of that from the officer's report. Second question, the affordable housing, can you say a bit more about why you've located it, where you've located it, and the quality of the design in terms of sustainability? Because one of the speakers was suggesting that the design standards of the affordable housing were not as high as the rest of the site. So could you comment about that, please? That would be really helpful.
Yeah, so the affordable houses have been designed to be fabric first construction. They'd be designed and built off site, and then they'd be brought in in a panel system, so we can ensure that they're airtight and thermally efficient. So the fabric first construction method will ensure that we reduce energy usage within those homes, and those homes will be powered by air source heat pumps to heat and provide hot water, reducing the amount of energy that those properties will use. They've been designed to a very high standard to reduce running costs for future families.
Okay, and secondly, so the second part of my question is why they're located in that position. There seems to be some query over whether that's the best place for them. They're obviously separated from the market housing on the site. So why did you choose to locate them on that southern boundary?
Yeah, so we've located, they're actually inset within the southern boundary. They're not actually on the southern boundary. They're inset and they're behind a whole series of trees and hedges that are existing. We've located them in this portion because that would then fall within the infilling of Greenbelt, and you don't need to be within a defined boundary line. You need to be associated with the village, and this does associate them. It continues the ribbon development along that side of the street itself, as can be seen in the proposed street scene drawings, and they're directly opposite existing houses as well on the opposite side. By placing them here as well, we are able to distribute vehicle movement between the north and the south entrance gates, and that will have benefits which the Highways Authority have agreed with.
Okay.
Councillor Amy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. The gifted land to the parish council. Yes, it's a gift. This is also something that comes with a burden, because then it would have to be maintained and looked after. Is there going to be any form of transitional period of which maintenance responsibility will be handled between yourselves and the parish council?
Yes, there is. There's a 10-year transitional period proposed, where there's a yearly payment made for the upkeep of that gifted land for the first 10 years. That would give sufficient time for the land to bed in with its new wildlife features, and then it would just self-generate after that point.
So payments we made to be put towards the maintenance of it, but who would be working that? So that would be the parish council would have to employ people or action things, but money's being paid to cover the cost of it all.
Yes, that's correct. So money will be paid to the parish council each year. The parish council will own the land. It will become part of their parkland.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. Going back to the affordable housing, did I understand right that there's actually the rear of the houses that are facing the road?
Yes, that's correct. So they can have south-facing gardens.
But that means that the view from the road will be of the back of the houses and their gardens.
But the view is obscured because of the mature hedging and trees that separate the gardens to the highway.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the members of the committee? No? In which case, could I invite the officer to respond to any of the issues you wish?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So I will start, I believe, with the trees, the loss of the trees to where the 4 affordable units will be located. I set out in the report that the trees to be removed are predominantly category C, low value, and category U, I believe, is poor condition and health. There would also be the removal of some category B trees, which are of moderate value and quality. But again, within that section of the report, I set out that the development would supplement the existing trees and replace any removed specimens. And then to add to that, of course, we have the 51% increase in biodiversity net gain, which is substantial in this case. And then on to the siting of the affordable units. So in my officer report, I have identified harm to both the visual openness of the greenbelt and to harms to the conservation area. However, this harm is outweighed by the benefits of the scheme, which I set out in section 4.4 of the report. So I've found quite a few benefits of the scheme, which when doing the balancing, I found that the benefits of the scheme outweigh the harm. Then maintenance has been partially covered already, but just to clarify, the parish council requested £10,000 a year for a period of 10 years to cover the costs of the maintenance of that land to be gifted. And then on to the remainder of the site and greenbelt assessment. So within paragraph 154 of the MPPF, there's an exception for previously developed land, and in this case where you're providing affordable units, what it states is essentially no more than substantial harms to the greenbelt. So whilst I said earlier, there's visual harms to the greenbelt, there's a net benefit in spatial openness to the greenbelt. I have assessed in the reports that whilst there'll be harm perhaps in parts of the site where there currently is no development, there would be improvements to visual openness to other parts of the site, such as where the barn is being removed. And I think that covers it. I think that's what I've noted. So yeah, thank you, Chair.
Thanks for that, Ben. So just to confirm for the committee that the officer's recommendation is to grant permission to the application. Can I have a proposer of a motion to either approve, refuse, or defer the application? Councillor Amy Allen.
For the purposes of moving on to the debate, I propose we grant.
Thank you. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Brown.
I'm happy to second that proposal.
Thank you. So we have a proposal to approve. May we open to debate? Councillor Amy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. So the concerns that were brought up, we listened to, have been answered. There was discussion regarding the gifted land and it being potentially a burden, but we consider there's a transitional period where there's going to be paid maintenance for a decade, which I think is very generous. The questions regarding, yes, it is Greenbelt, but exceptional circumstances. One of those is of it being previously developed land. This land literally has a house on it. It is developed land. So I don't understand how it can be classed as not as part of that remit. I think this is going to be a benefit. We need some more affordable housing. We've already heard that there's going to be a substantial amount of greenage to be up between the houses and the road. I've never seen a house near a road that's been an obstruction. Usually the roads go around the houses. And also one of the biggest things is, I'm looking to all of my officers, is there any legal reason to reject this development?
Sure.
We've obviously made a recommendation to grant planning permission, and as members you can take a different view. We've set out in the report why we consider that the benefits of the scheme outweigh the identified harms. We have identified some harm to the visual openness of the Greenbelt, albeit there is benefit in terms of the spatial openness of the Greenbelt because there's a net loss in volume. And we've identified that there would be some harm to the conservation area, but we've identified that policy basically says public benefits may outweigh that harm, and it's a matter of planning judgment. So if you disagree with our judgment and our balancing exercise, then you could refuse planning permission. We're setting out reasons for your disagreement with that recommendation, but we consider, well, this application has been carefully considered over about 2 years. So there's been lots of toing and froing with the local flood authority, for example, to ensure that the site is the drainage on the site proposed would be satisfactory to meet climate change increases in, as we all know, climate change will result in increases in flooding, and this has been designed to address climate change, for example. So my long answer to your question is you could come to a different decision, but we've carefully considered the benefits against the harms, and we recommend that planning permission be granted.
Thank you, Sean.
Does that answer your question? Thank you. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. I think overall this is a really good scheme, and actually think it probably improves the greenbelt. Looking at some of those photos of some of the dilapidated outbuildings and the way that the site's been designed, and hearing from the applicant about the sustainability, the green roofs, how the design's been fitted with the topography and so forth, I actually think it's probably a benefit from the point of view of the greenbelt. I don't really see that as a huge problem. The only sticking point I see is the affordable dwellings seem a bit odd, the way they face into the site with a big hedge behind their back garden seems a bit odd. It doesn't quite fit with the way I look at it, with the street scene, with the cottages that are further along the existing cottages. Otherwise, I kind of accept the idea that it's a continuation, what the applicant was saying about infill. The other question, I probably should have asked this earlier, I'm really sorry, but in 4.3.83, you say that 3 of the dwellings will be social or affordable rented units. There's quite a big difference between social or affordable, particularly in North Herts, where 80% market value is not really affordable for a lot of people. It would be nice if that could be nailed to social. But I think on balance, it's a very good scheme, very high standards. The biodiversity net gain is great. The loss of some trees is regrettable, but I think overall there's wildflower meadows. There's a lot of greening. The gifting of the land to the parish council, the fact that it opens up the estate for the use of residents is really to be applauded, and it seems like it's a very good scheme overall. So I will be supporting it, but I do have those couple of caveats, and I just I don't know, it's probably too late now, but whether that was all considered around the siting of the affordable homes. It seems regrettable that they're not quite in keeping with the rest of that street scene. Thank you.
Thank you. Were you searching for an answer from one of the officers? Am I able to return to the officers? Ben, were you in a position to answer that question?
So I haven't got the breakdown of the affordable units in front of me, but that will be set out in section 106 that we sign and agree. I think as previously said, citing of the affordable units, we have identified harm, but the benefits of the scheme outweigh that harm.
Anything further, Ruth?
No.
Okay. Do any other members of the committee have any questions, any comments you want to make? Councillor Muir, sorry.
My concern is the loss of trees. Will the replacements be standard trees or will they be whips? Because I would prefer standard trees to be looked after and maintained. If any of them die within 5 years, they're replaced again.
I'm taking that as a comment rather than a question, or is it a question?
Well, it's a question about standard trees instead of whips, yes.
Okay. Ben, would you be in a position to answer that?
So I don't have the species names of the trees to be replaced. There's quite a substantial suite of documents and works proposed within the site to, I think, like I said, set out in that section of the report to enhance and replace, supplement. But the particular species I don't have to hand.
I'm not very happy with that answer because you'll be leaving it open for them to plant whips, which will take 15 to 20 years to grow to a standard tree?
So there are plans submitted, landscaping plans submitted alongside the application that will set out what is being planted, and we can condition if necessary. But I just don't have those specific details to hand right now. But the information has been submitted.
You satisfied with that, Councillor Mill? Thank you. Councillor Tyson.
I just wanted to say that I agree with the officer's report in the weighing up of the benefits and the harms. I think that it's clearly the benefits outweigh the harms to my mind. I think also I noted that the parish council didn't actually object to this scheme. I think I've read that this school is very much in favour of having access to the site there. Is that correct? Or am I mixing that up with the other application? I'll withdraw that remark just in case. However, that being said, I mean, there is the issue about the 4 cottages, but I think that in terms of, you know, whether they're an eyesore or not and cause some harm in that respect, I think that with the blending in with the other houses and the planting that's proposed to partially obscure them, I think that I wouldn't have a problem with those, even given the fact that they appear to be facing the wrong way, really. But otherwise, on the whole, I think this is a very good proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Mantle.
Yes, I basically agree with Councillor Brown's comments, but I'm very concerned about those 4 houses because they do not appear to be integrated into the street scene, unless I'm missing something completely. One of the horrors I've had for years is where something is not quite as good as it could be, but it's been hidden. And I'm very worried that they do not appear to integrate into a street scene of other properties fronting onto the street, even though they're effectively next to the street. And that's my major concern with this application. The rest of it I can be quite happy with, and I don't think that the assessment regarding the green belt and the conservation area, I think that assessment is correct, and that this is the sort of development we should be allowing. But I am concerned about the failure to integrate the 4 affordable houses into the street scene.
Thank you, Councillor Mandel. Councillor McDonnell.
Thank you. I agree with the comments made by Councillor Allen and Councillor Brown regarding the overall scheme being very good. The only thing that still concerns me is the access and the fact that the north entrance will have a gate. Just looking at the refuse, sorry, I maybe should have brought this up earlier, but just looking at the refuse collection map, the 4 houses at the bottom, the access is via the south gate in and only collecting, it looks like, from those 4 houses, whereas the access to the rest is from the north. Does that mean that there is no access through the site? So, for example, if you come in on the side south, you can't come out the north? Or is there access right the way through?
Not via road.
Okay, so they are 2 completely separate accesses. Okay.
I have nobody else indicating at the moment. Does any other members of the committee wish to add anything, ask anything? No? Councillor Brown.
Coming back to the gate, can we request that there's no gate in the north, that it's not gated?
So the gates, they also see existing gates there, and there is also an extant permission for that access on a separate previous application back in 2021. So we have previously approved it, and Highways have previously had no objection to it. Whether once we remove the gate, it would be an amendment to the scheme. I don't know. Sean has a way of going about that.
Sean, did you have a view?
I usually have a view about most things. Yes, I do have a view. If we were talking about a scheme in isolation on a greenfield site, someone was proposing a gated community, we'd be seeking to resist that in terms of the submitted drawings. In this instance, we obviously have two existing gated accesses, and the proposal is for one access not to be gated, but for the other access to remain gated. If we were to try and exclude the northern access from being gated, I think we would have difficulty defending such a matter on appeal when one considers that for the condition to uphold an appeal, we must present evidence to show that that condition is necessary. In other words, planning permission should be refused otherwise. And I don't believe, given that the site is existing gated, that there would be a reasonable basis to impose such a condition.
Okay, thank you.
Any further debate? No. In which case we have a proposal. We have a motion in front of us to approve the application. May we move to the vote, please?
Chair, the motion's carried.
Thank you. May I suggest at this point that we have a 5-minute comfort break, partly because I think some members of the public may wish to leave, and partly because I want a comfort break. See you in 5 minutes. Okay. Are all members back, including the junior one? I don't mean you, Sadie. I mean... Okay. Thank you for indulging me in my comfort break. If we could move on to item 8, which is application 23028950 OP, land on the northeast side of the close, Codicott, Hearts. Alex Howard to present. Alex.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone. A written update was circulated to members yesterday. This was posted on the website for this meeting. The update concerns the wording of recommended conditions from Hertfordshire Ecology and the omission of one of their original conditions following clarification. For clarity, the applicant is in agreement with the revised conditions. It also concerns receipt of an updated formal response from the County Council's Growth and Infrastructure team following changes to the proposed development mix in consultation with the Council's housing officer. This updated formal response includes amended contributions sought from Hertfordshire County Council, and this has been reflected in the amended heads of terms table circulated to members, which has also been agreed by the applicant. If members have any questions on the written update, please feel free to ask. If we could please go to the presentation. Thank you. So the site is located to the northeast of the Close on the eastern edge of Codicott within the defined settlement boundary. The southern boundary is enclosed by the rear boundaries of properties on the Close, including an area of flat-roofed garages. The western boundary is enclosed by the rear gardens of properties on Grange Rise. The northern boundary comprises a high mature hedge and a line of closely planted trees, beyond which is open agricultural land. There is a belt of woodland against the eastern boundary, beyond which lies more agricultural land. You'll see in a moment, but the site increases in terms of its gradient from the southeast to the northwest. Access to the site is via the Close, and there are 2 public rights of way that cross the southern part of the site, and a permissive path crosses the site from the Close to its northwestern corner. The site is within flood zone 1, but the southeastern extent of the site is at low to high risk of surface water flooding. The site is approximately 135 metres away from the Grade 2 listed Bury. And the site has been allocated for residential development in the North Herts local plan, which was adopted in November 2022. The site is allocated under policy CD3 for approximately 48 dwellings. Next slide, please. So this is a photo from the Close, looking north towards the site where the access is proposed to be located. This is a view sort of from the junction with the Close and Valley Road, again looking north towards the site. And again, this is just another photo from that junction over the existing properties on the Close. This is a photo, sort of close-up photo from the existing access into the site, which is proposed to be developed into a more formal vehicle and pedestrian access. And this is just a view from slightly further back from that previous image. This also shows the existing lay-by parking areas on either side of the highway. This shows the existing run of single-storey garages, which are immediately adjacent to the southern part of the site. And this photo is sort of from the existing access looking west towards the properties on Grange Rise, and you can really tell the increase in the gradient in this photo. This is another photo from a similar location, sort of looking north across the site. And this is, again, from a similar location looking east. And you can just about on the right there make out the backs of properties on the paddocks. And this is a view from within the site looking south back towards the existing access of the Close and the existing residential properties. And this is a photo sort of from further within the site, a little bit higher up, looking south, which also helps again to appreciate the ground level changes. And again, it's a similar position to the previous photo, looking west, again, back towards the sort of boundaries and the residential properties that are existing. And again, similar position, looking north towards the properties on Grange Rise. This photo is from roughly the highest point of the site, looking south. It shows the relationship between the site and properties on Grange Rise. And again, a similar position, but looking east. And I think this shows the full extent of the site area. This is from sort of the lower part of the site, looking back towards the existing dwellings on the paddocks. And again, a similar position, looking north. You can sort of make out the public right of way from the tread marks on the ground. This is from the western corner of the site, where the public right of way through the site sort of ends and goes into the adjacent field. And again, from a similar position, but looking backwards, sort of towards the south. So this is an extract from the North Herts Local Plan Policies Map C, Nebworth and other areas. The map shows the 4 allocated sites in Codicut for residential development. The site before you this evening is the middle right of this image, which is labelled CD3. And this is just a screenshot from Google Maps, which I think just shows the site in context with the existing residential properties to the south and the west, as well as the sort of wider fields to the north and east. So this, you've already seen the site location plan. Just to be clear, the application seeks outline planning permission for the erection of up to 42 residential dwellings, including affordable housing, public open space, landscape planting, sustainable drainage systems, and a new access arrangements from the close, with all matters reserved except for means of access. So this is the proposed access and footway plan. This shows the extent of access upgrade works to accommodate the vehicular and pedestrian traffic, internal access and footway works, and wider highway works, including the formation of a pedestrian footway on the eastern side of the close and crossing points on the Close and Valley Road. And this is an illustrative master plan for the site. It shows how the site could be delivered in respect of proposed dwellings, general arrangement, public open space, landscaping, planting, sustainable drainage systems, and the access from the close. This is the access and movement parameter plan, which has been sort of used to inform the indicative site layout. And these are some site sections incorporating existing and proposed indicative dwellings. And this is the illustrative framework plan showing existing and proposed key features on the indicative scheme. And this is the landscape strategy plan for the site, showing retained planting on the north and east boundaries, new planting across the site, including an integrated SUDS feature and an area of public open space. And I would just like to remind members, if I may, that the application before you tonight is an outline planning application with all matters reserved apart from access. Therefore, details relating to design, landscaping, layout, and scale are not submitted for detailed consideration at this point, as these matters would be addressed in a subsequent reserved matters application if this application is approved. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Alex. And now questions from members. Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. So access. So there's only one access into the site. You mentioned pedestrians, you didn't mention cyclists. Is there going to be a cycleway into the site, and will that be the only access for cycles and pedestrians?
So let me just, I've got the plans here. far as I can tell from the access plan, I can't see any sort of specialist sort of cycle lane, if that's kind of what you're asking me. I would then have to assume that cyclists would have to use the road.
So it's a shared would it be a shared footpath with pedestrians, or they'd use the actual road? I mean, it depends on the width, I guess.
Yes, it would, and I would have to assume the road in this case.
Okay, and it's a reasonably quiet road, is it?
Well, at the moment, obviously it's essentially a dead end. So cars kind of go down the close in that direction, and unless they turn left into the garages, there's nowhere really else for them to go.
Yeah.
And obviously
that would change with 42 dwellings.
That would change considerably, yes, because then the only way in would be down the close into a development of up to 42 dwellings.
So second part to that question, is there any other cycle and pedestrian access, like from the Grange side or from the other sides of the application site, from the other housing?
I don't believe so. No, I think the public right of way, obviously in the southeastern part of the site, which obviously goes out that way. But as far as the properties in the northeast where the Grange is, I don't believe so.
There'd be no access into the site direct from there.
No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Mantle.
Thank you. On some of the plans, there was a strip of green outside the red lines site. What is it?
Could we bring that up if you don't mind, just to make sure we're talking about the same thing? Is that plan?
It wasn't on that one, it's the previous one. There. That area to the beyond the red line boundary of the site. I just wonder what it was and what it's doing there.
Honest answer is I don't know. I don't think it's material to the application. I mean, in the same way, for example, the properties on Grange Rise, Valley Road and the Close are shown, but they're also not. I guess it's just shown for context purposes, perhaps.
Is it a field boundary or a hedgerow or what?
I mean, I've got a zoomed in version, and it does seem that there is the footpath that crosses through the southeast of the site from the Close to the western corner appears to that green line there, appears to sort of continue in that direction. So yeah, I think it's to show kind of permeability through the site to the other parts of the public right of way.
The pictures seem to indicate nothing much growing in that area.
Yes.
That's why I wondered.
Yes, you'd be right, yes. I think it is just to show permeability in context.
Councillor Tyson.
Thank you. I don't know if I should be asking this, but with these outline applications on these sorts of sites, when we're only looking at the access, I just wondered what weight, if any at all, we give to what's, for example, your slides that you've borrowed from the design and access statement from the applicant with the illustrative layouts and such like, because they theoretically could change entirely, couldn't they, over the course of time between the outline that we're looking at now and a full application?
I mean, it's up to the applicant to determine what they submit with an application. I mean, I've had outline applications with nothing but a red line, and sometimes applicants like to submit a bit more detail up front to show indicatively at least how a scheme could be delivered. But you've also got to bear in mind that there are a lot of, it's not just the outline permission that we're looking at here. Policy CD3 has a lot of other criteria, and some of those criteria might therefore need to inform the design at this stage to just show that in the applicant's view that a development is acceptable in principle and policy compliant. You might therefore need to show certain things, which is, I think, why we've got a little bit more detail than what we normally would. Sean might want to jump in there.
The layout plan is illustrative, but it does give an indication how the site could be developed, and there would be a reasonable expectation to generally follow the parameter plans and the illustrative master plan when it comes to reserved matters, but they would not be tied to that. looking at the topography and the arrangements and where the access is, I think there's a significant limitation as to how you could develop this site in any event. Given that the drainage would be to the lower end of the site where all the landscaping is and the sustainable drainage, attenuation pond, etc., it does give you an indication as to how it would be developed, but they would not be tied by the illustrative master plan. But we would anticipate, when we're dealing with the reserve matters application, that they would have regard to the parameter plans and the illustrative master plan when they come to submit the reserve matters. In other words, it's showing that how it's anticipated the site would be delivered, and they can deliver in a reasonable way the number of houses that they're proposing in this outline application. If we felt, based upon the illustrative master plan, it's all looking rather tight because they're proposing, say, double the amount of houses that's in here, then that would illustrate that it would be overdevelopment. The illustrative master plan does show a reasonable layout, albeit they would not be tied to that layout. If that makes sense.
Thank you. It does make sense. What I was thinking partly was that the illustrative master plan shows the design with fewer houses than the local plan sets out as being a potential number.
Yes.
And maybe I'll ask the applicant later what the chances are of that changing.
Well, the outline application is for up to 42. So the reserve matters could not go beyond that number. But as you can see from the illustrative layout, there's quite a lot of open space, green space, and landscaping, and a drainage pond, etc. And therefore, that probably indicates the numbers that are being proposed. In other words, the whole site is not being developed; only about 2/3 is being built upon.
Yes.
Under the current proposal.
I need to look back over at the exact numbers again. I thought this proposal mentioned a number that was somewhat fewer than the
48, I think, is allocated
yeah,
in local plans.
yes.
42
So that-
is the proposal. So
Yes,
we are
so
short of it. But
the skeptical side of me was looking at that big green side of it, thinking next time we see this, it's going to be full of houses.
no,
Okay.
If you were to grant outline planning permission, it would be for up to 42 dwellings.
It would. Okay.
If they wanted to submit an application for more, it would have to either be a further outline application or a full application.
Thank you.
It could not be dealt with under the reserve matters for more housing.
Thank you. Sorry. Yeah, I should see your light was on when I wasn't. Thank you. I've got Councillor Amy Allen.
Thank you, Chair. Will the side access into the wooded area be a footpath or a bridleway?
My understanding is it'll be a footpath, but might be one to clarify with the applicant's representative.
Yep.
If that's okay, just
Yeah,
to be
definitely.
sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more questions to the officer? No? Oh, Councillor Brown.
Just one short one. Is it possible to add pedestrian access at the reserve matters stage, or does that have to be nailed now? Because it seems to me that the plan is showing that there's a pedestrian access out to the northeast. Is it the northeast? The top corner, the highest, northwest, the highest corner. I just think it's quite important that there's another pedestrian access out of this site, because if that's high land as well, who's going to want to go all the way down the hill and then we're all the way up the hill again? And it's showing which one's that you're looking at there?
I mean, I can see what you're seeing. It's that kind of squiggly line.
Yes, the green
right
squiggly
into
line.
the northern part.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I can't see, for example, where that would link into Grange Rise, for example.
But then
Whereas in the other parameter plan, the public right of way shown through the site then show the continuation of the rights of way into adjacent fields. So I'm not sure if there is anything up there to necessarily connect to, perhaps. I may be wrong.
I think this is quite important. So the public rights of way, of course, they're rights of way, but this is showing a pedestrian access that's not a right of way, which
Yes.
means it's not protected.
Yes.
Therefore, if it can't be changed later, I would like to ensure that you can get out at the top corner, because otherwise people are going to be getting in cars to go round.
Yes, no, I see your point. I mean, when we get these kinds of applications outlined with access, in the main, it's to do with the sort of central vehicular and pedestrian access, so the one off the close in this case. And if there are public rights of way, it's ensuring that they are suitably considered. The answer to your question is if it could be changed at reserve matters is I'm not 100% sure. Maybe it might be informed by changes in layout or matters outside of planning control, but yeah, Sean, don't know, what do you think?
This outline application seeks permission for access to the site. The whole access to all of the dwellings is not shown and is not sought at this stage. Therefore, it's not beyond us to be able to address other means of access to the dwellings and other accesses within the site. As far as pedestrian access is concerned, there's an existing public right of way that goes along that southeastern boundary from the close further to the northeast. The access plan, or whatever it's called, access and movement parameter plan, shows that retained public right of way. A further pedestrian access from the paddocks, which is the housing to the southeast of the close, and then various public rights of way that meander along that northern edge through to a link up to that very northwestern corner. And that's what's proposed in the current movement and access and movement parameter plan. But layout is reserved, and the current outline application basically relates to access to the site, not access throughout the site.
Okay, that's fine. So it can be changed at a later date.
Yes.
Yes, that's
That's
all I
my
really
view.
wanted to be sure of. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no further questions, I'm not seeing any. Could I ask member of the public objecting, Daniel Stokes? Daniel, you have 5 minutes, and I will remind you when you have a minute left. Thank you.
Thank you. So in addition to my objection, I would also like to highlight at this time that Codicote Parish Council have also voted to object this application. And in respect of Village Views, of the 34 responses received, 2 were neutral and the remaining 32 were all to object. So there was no acceptance. A lot of this is based on infrastructure, which is illustrative at this stage, but access is one of those points. A lot of the responses state it's outside of the scope at this stage. And firstly, I believe that it's therefore premature to consider this application, even if only looking at access until further details on the actual plot can be confirmed. Again, in general, the design, landscape, layout and scale is understood as being for sort of demonstration only. And key stakeholders such as the Highways, Environmental Health and the Flood Authority, for example, have stated they do not object, but this is subject to conditions. At the time of me preparing this was 24 conditions outlined. So again, I think it's premature at this stage to only look at access when there's a large number of conditions for the actual site itself that could have implications. An example is the Hertfordshire Rights of Way have made clear that any public rights of way must not be restricted during this development, and that any approval to temporarily do this, in their words, any diversions to footpaths, for example, requires a lengthy process and is not guaranteed. So potentially, if access is granted, some of these conditions may not be met and we may be sort of stuck. Again, with the local plan, that's obviously where this is driven. And though we recognise the need for housing, within that we've got CD 1, 2, 3 and 5 as plots, which have an allocation of 315 homes. Based on CD 1, 2 and 5, with the data available in the public domain, it suggests 83, 66 and 167 dwellings, and this totals 316 planned homes. So actually, without CD3, if these numbers are correct, we already have a plan of 316 homes being built against a local plan allocation of 315, which suggests it's actually already been met. Specifically looking at the access, although there are other plots, unlike them, CD3 has the most limited access. As we've seen, there's one direct route in, and though the highway agency has identified about 33 more trips as not too significant, despite the potential bottleneck, because there's no collision data, again, they've suggested this may not be an issue. Within my last 16 months at my property on Valley Road, I've seen both fire engines and ambulances unable to access this due to parking on the road that would be needed for access to get to this development site. As such, it's unlikely that during construction, these vehicles would be able to get through as well. And I think it's important to note this is not a Monday to Friday only first thing in the morning thing. Throughout many hours of the day, access is very limited. Also, if traffic control measures such as priority lanes or things are put in place, this will further reduce the existing parking space. So although it may prevent a bottleneck at the only opening that's been proposed, it will already limit space where people are parking on the road, and it's causing these blockages as we stand. And then finally, from a more personal level, I know, again, this is only illustrative, but there is a condition that any development does not result in unacceptable harm to the neighbouring amenity. The officer has acknowledged within the documentation that provision of bungalows in the southwest corner goes some way to mitigate the possible adverse effects because of the significant gradient. However, a bungalow at the top of this significant gradient is still going to have direct lines of sight on the ground floor property into existing properties, gardens, and also first floors, which will include bedrooms. There is a statement that will say
1 minute
additional.
left.
Thank you. There is a statement to say additional perimeter screening and planting will be considered. But again, my issue with this is because of the significant gradient, though hedgerows have been suggested, there's also within the illustration the planting of trees. With these trees to be able to grow to a sufficient height in order to offer obscurity and offer privacy, not only will it segregate this development that is already limited in access, but it will also potentially impact home insurance prices of existing dwellings because trees are over a certain size, and also could impact the light. Based on these, I would ask that the application is rejected at this time.
Thank you, Daniel. It was very well timed. Can I ask the committee if any points of clarification from Daniel? No? Okay, thank you. In which case, could I ask the member advocate, Councillor Ralph Munt? So, Ralph, you have a maximum of 5 minutes.
Marvellous. Thank you very much, Chair. And colleagues, as you proceed to determine this application, I'd ask that you take into account a number of different factors, but mainly the context of which this development is located in. The local plan has allocated over 400 new homes in the village of Codicot, without, I would argue, and as you've heard from Mr. Stokes, adequate infrastructure in place to support that development. In fact, we are already seeing a strain on key local infrastructure as more homes are being built and as new residents are moving into these communities. All one needs to do is drive down the Codicot High Street to see how congested it is. And the fact is that the Close and Valley Road is it's a very similar story there as well. Now, I would submit that out of all of the strategic sites in Codicot, this is the most inappropriate and the one which causes significant concern for a number of reasons. If we turn to the matter of access, as you can see in the diagrams of which have been presented before this committee, the access to this development goes into a residential road, an already busy and congested residential road. It doesn't go onto a main road. And therefore, if you are minded to grant permission to this application, it's vital that the construction traffic impact on local residents is mitigated by officers and by the developer themselves. Now, we've already seen issues associated with parking on the High Street, on Valley Road, and on the Close itself, and it's already difficult for large vehicles such as refuge vehicles, fire engines, and even those construction vehicles, of which, if permission is granted today, would need to be traverse the site in order to actually access it and, you know, deliver the raw materials to go and construct homes. Just the other day, during the winter conditions, we saw a refuge vehicle struggling to get out of Valley Road. Now, if you're going to be having a number of large construction vehicles and a number of other vehicles, surely this is not appropriate access for this site. And obviously, Councillor Brown rightfully raises the point surrounding the fact that there is only one access route for both vehicles, pedestrians, and cyclists. Then I wish to turn to the matter of flooding, because Councillor Tyson raises a very good question to officers surrounding the local plan allocation. This was originally allocated for 48 homes in the local plan. It now stands before us for 42. And the key principal reason for that is because there is a significant flood risk that exists on this site. And it's not just the impact of potential flooding and the risk of flooding on the homes of which are proposed, but it's also the significant risk of flooding of which is exacerbated, I would argue, for those homes lower down Valley Road who are on lower ground when compared to this site. In fact, I was campaigning during the general election and I spoke to a lady in one of those homes who reminded me of the fact that there was a significant instance of flooding of where groundwater and surface water flowed underneath her home, and there was a significant response from this council, from the police, from the fire and rescue service, and other stakeholders as well. That is, the likelihood of that only increases if this development is granted permission. I would be arguing that if you are minded to grant permission, it's vital to ensure that any measures imposed to address the flood risk during construction are built prior to the development of any homes in order to try and mitigate that and ensure that residents in Valley Road are not going to be flooded out of their homes, as has happened on a previous occasion. I would argue that council needs more information as to the flood risk before making and taking a decision on this property. And I just want to then touch on, thank you, Chair, the point of surrounding infrastructure. Now, Codicot has been plagued by a general lack of infrastructure to accommodate all of these new developments. Residents tell me they already struggle to get a GP appointment from Bridge Cottage Surgery in Welwyn. And any development will put additional stress on local infrastructure such as that. There's no money from this development in the Section 106 agreement to upgrade the capacity of local GP surgery provision. That is a significant cause for concern. I would argue that if you are minded to grant the permission to this development, you focus on ensuring that there are sufficient measures in place to mitigate the impact of flooding, and of course, that there is proper enforcement of planning conditions. Previous sites in Codicot, conditions have been imposed and...
Can I ask you to wind up?
Indeed, I will. Conditions have been imposed and they haven't been enforced, and that is to the detriment of local residents and to the local community. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have any questions or points of clarification from Councillor Munzer? Right. In which case, could I call the applicant's agent, Lindsay Rigg? Lindsay, you also have 5 minutes, and I'll let you know when you have a minute left.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. I'd firstly like to begin by thanking your officers for the positive and helpful way they've dealt with this application. This has allowed all key issues to be resolved in an application to which there are no technical objections to be presented to you tonight with a recommendation for approval. The applicants obtained an interest in this allocated site more than 2 years ago, and since then have spent time investigating the constraints and opportunities of the site to devise a scheme that responds positively to these and the expectations of relevant policies, including the site-specific expectations of policy CD3. This process has been informed by pre-application discussions with officers, as well as discussions with the Parish Council. Our discussions with officers led to the scheme being refined, including a reduction in the number of dwellings from 48 as per the allocation to 42, in order to achieve a scheme that responds appropriately to site constraints, including neighbouring properties and its location on the edge of the village. As part of our discussions with the parish council, their views were sought on the scheme. We accept they object, but as part of those discussions, we were able to speak about benefits that could be delivered in the village. A number of these benefits, including an upgraded play area and contributions to the Scout Hut, Pavilion and Memorial Hall projects, are to be secured by the Section 106 agreement. The officer's report provides a robust assessment of the proposals, and whilst I don't wish to repeat that here, I would like to draw attention to the following points. There is support for the application from all statutory bodies. There is clear agreement with your officers that the scheme complies with the site-specific policy in the adopted local plan. The affordable housing mix and tenure has been agreed with your housing officer and will be secured in the Section 106. The mix of private housing has also been agreed, the majority of which will be 2 and 3 bedroom properties in response to local identified needs. The proposals are considered to establish the parameters for a well-designed, detailed scheme to come forward at the reserve matters stage that would respect the transition between the existing settlement edge and the countryside beyond, and achieve acceptable relationships with existing properties in terms of distances, daylighting and overlooking, etc. They've been designed to work with the topography of the land, with the provision of bungalows in the southwest corner and heights restricted to no more than 2 stories across the rest of the site. The landscaping details show that important landscape features would be retained, including the Category A oak tree and hedgerow along the northern boundary, which would be incorporated in a 12-metre landscape buffer, mitigating any impact on views from the countryside beyond. It is agreed that there are no harms to local heritage assets. Formal open space will be secured on site in the form of a local area of play, along with a contribution towards the upgrade of the existing play area on Valley Road. Agreement has been reached regarding any measures needed to mitigate the impacts arising from increased pressure on local infrastructure. As part of this, contributions sought by the district, county and parish councils have all been confirmed and will be secured by Section 106 agreement. On the basis of the above, I would invite the committee to approve the application before you tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lindsay. Any questions, points of clarification from the committee? Councillor Amy Allen.
Get to ask my bridal way question now. Is the access point, the footpath that goes into the wooded area, is that going to be a bridle way, or is that just a footpath?
It's a footpath.
Could it be made into a bridle way?
I suppose that would have to be subject to the necessary discussions with the rights of way team.
Mm-hmm. Super, thank you.
Thank you. Do I have any other questions? No? In which case, can I invite the officer to respond to any of the issues raised?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think most of what's been raised I've clarified in my report, but just to be clear on a few matters, the point raised by Councillor Muntzer about construction traffic that must be mitigated if this application is approved. One of the highway conditions before you is a construction management plan, which is quite standard for applications of this size, which would seek to mitigate any of that construction impact. The point about there being one access for cars, pedestrians and bicycles, I acknowledge that, but the Highway Authority, through rounds of consultation, have considered that this is acceptable, subject to conditions. Again, the flood risk at the site, we went back and forward with the LLFA a couple of times, and I think they proposed 8 conditions on this to cover that off. And the last point I just want to make about the fact that Councillor Muntzer raised that there's no funding in the heads of terms for the local GP. Just to clarify, I did reach out to the NHS during the application to request if they wanted any contributions, and they confirmed that they didn't. So I think that's all I need to say at this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, so the officer's recommendation is to grant permission to the application with the removal of condition 13, with the amended wording of conditions 11, 12 and 14, and the relevant renumbering of existing conditions. Can I have a proposer of a motion to approve, refuse or defer the application, please? Councillor Brown.
Before we, can I just ask a question of the Development and Conservation Manager before we do that? Is that permitted?
I think I can probably allow that. Yeah.
Okay, so the objector said that we'd already met the target for housing construction in Codicott, and therefore this site's no longer needed. Can you comment on that? Because obviously this is an allocated site in the local plan. And this is an outline planning application. So on that basis, would it be permitted to refuse it or not?
As the site is allocated in the local plan for housing, there'd be no reasonable basis to refuse planning permission for housing on this site. Before you would be considerations relating to those matters that are before us, but because housing may well have been delivered elsewhere in Codicott is not a reasonable basis for refusal of planning permission for housing on this site, which is allocated for housing in the local plan. And therefore, the principle of housing has been accepted through its allocation.
Thank you. And just one second question. Can you assure us that condition 8, the construction management plan, will be agreed before commencement? Because there's been a bit of a history in Codicott with that not happening and the construction management causing a huge problem. So it's under condition 8, and the planning officer's already said there would be a construction management plan, but in the past it hasn't been agreed before construction began and has caused a problem in this area. So I just wanted to be assured that that would be enforced, that condition would be enforced.
Yes, we would seek to enforce any pre-commencement condition. We are aware that there's been issues with other developers in failing to comply with some pre-commencement conditions. Those have been dealt with by our enforcement team. But we could not withhold planning permission based upon a fear that they may not comply with a pre-commencement condition. One would have to reasonably accept that they would endeavour to do so, notwithstanding that other developers may well have failed to meet the requirements of the planning permission.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for indulging me.
Thank you. So just to remind the committee, we're still looking for a proposer. Councillor Mantle.
It's exactly what I was intending to do, is to propose that we accept this application and in accordance with the recommendations from the officers.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? I've got Councillor Muir and Councillor Allen both indicating. I think
I have a question actually of our development officer.
Is it? Can I just check? Are we okay to take a question at this stage? We're sort of halfway.
Well,
through.
I had been.
My apologies.
Indicating.
In which case, Councillor Muir, you may have your question.
Thank
and my
you.
apologies.
Thank you. The access, the footpath along the access road, will it be of the normal 3 meters wide?
Answer that. Be able to answer that.
Bear with me just a second. So forgive me, which part of the access are you referring to?
To the entrance to the site.
So the footpaths that are shown on the access plan. Yeah, they are showing as 2 meters wide on the
3
axis.
meters.
Two.
2.
Hmm.
I think these days a lot of highways want 3 meters. But if highways agreed it, then
They did. They have, yes.
it's too late.
I have Councillor Amy Allen. We looking to second or
Yes, happy to second for the purposes of moving on with the debate.
so we have a mover and a seconder. If we could move into any debate, please. No? I have no debate. Then if we could oh sorry, Councillor Brown. You always catch me right at the end.
Sorry, I was
I'll
waiting for
forgive
other
you.
people. I didn't want to be doing all the talking, but
You go ahead.
I think I'm slightly sad that there's nothing about cyclists and that there's not a confirmed access point for pedestrians and cyclists to the northwest, is the right top of the site. But I will be supporting this because it's an allocated site in the local plan, and the access is by and large acceptable, and we can add pedestrian axes later, I have been told. So I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. I now definitely don't have anyone indicating. So if we could move to the vote, Sheena.
Chair, the motion's carried.
Thank you very much. If I may suggest a very brief break to allow members of the public who wish to leave, and then we'll continue with the business. Would Councillor Daniel Allen like his laptop back? If so, come and collect it from the front. Cool. Okay, should we move on, colleagues? Well said, Councillor Motor. I second. Right. Okay. So we are on to item 9, which is planning appeals. Sean Greaves to present. Sorry, I caught you on the vote.
Let me just scroll down. Sorry. It is very short and sweet. You'll be pleased to hear. Apart from that, I do have an update about a hearing that's supposed to have occurred today. So as far as the appeals are concerned, we've had one appeal lodged, and that is relating to removal of a condition. an application under section 73. That's the written representations. And as far as decisions that have been made, there's been two decisions, one relating, both have been dismissed, one relating to an application to vary condition on a planning permission, and another that related to the erection of 2 detached 4-bedroom dwellings. I don't think they raise any particular issues that I need to talk about unless any members have got any questions. And the appeal decisions are attached at the end of the table. The update that I have relates to the hearing that's supposed to have occurred today, relating to Respring in Baldock. And the planning inspector on Monday postponed the hearing because the inspector had not yet received a draft Section 106 bilateral unilateral undertaking and the statement of common ground. Those matters were progressing, but due to various factors, they were not finalised. I think this really does reflect that there was a relatively narrow gap between the start of the appeal and the schedule of the hearing. That was down to the planning inspectorate, no one else. And I think that caused these problems in getting some fairly complicated matters resolved through the statement of common ground. We do not have, at this point, a rescheduled date. Planning inspector has also said that she may be minded to upgrade it to a public inquiry, which would incur additional costs, but that decision has also not been made at this time. Obviously, I will update you at future meetings as matters are determined and the matter progressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. The report is for noting, but are there any questions for Sean from the committee? No. In which case we move on to item 10, Planning Enforcement Quarterly Report. Oops. Christella Menson to present.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. This report, the quarterly report before you is also for noting. But I did want to make a couple of comments and just pick some key points, if I may. I just wanted to highlight in the first instance that this particular report is the third in the series, just to give some insight of the work that we're doing within the enforcement team, some of the reviews that have been undertaking, and this kind of focus, this kind of looks at the customer experience. We know that that's critical to the work that we do in terms of reputation, how we're perceived, and also how members of the public engage with us as well. One of the other points that I just wanted to mention on the back of that is performance, and also set some context to the breaches that we do investigate. One of the things that we do recognise is that the information that we have available and members of the public, that's actually been really key. We've reviewed some of the information that's come in and identified them as general inquiries. And we've done some key work on some signposting when we're responding to members of the public, and also when we're setting up new breaches as well. Another area under this umbrella comes under of frequently asked questions. So members will notice that over time, starting from last week, there are some changes that are taking place on the website. So it will include that data. It will also include just a broad overview as a summary, just to indicate some of the work that is happening in planning enforcement. Now, we know that it's not a kind of a rapid response service by any means, but just to give some visibility in terms of what is happening, just so that yourselves and also members of the public can have some understanding of what is going on, what isn't visible to them. Another area, the last area I'm just going to touch on, is the Section 106 monitoring data. We know that's critical for us as an organisation, and also in terms of how that's monitored and how that's reported within the planning enforcement space. So we do have a separate report on that, but in the context of that specifically, we just wanted to note that from the beginning of December, there'll be some changes on the website. So that information is going to be updated for everybody. There are going to be quarterly reporting on that. And also the annual report is going to be ready for us by the end of this year. Now, on that specifically, I just wanted to share with you some additional information that is going to be included as part of the report. So we are going to see some lists of contributions that are received from agreements over the last year, and also where the spends are. So what's been allocated, what's actually been received, what's been spent, and what's kind of available for allocation. That will also include a comprehensive overview as well, so that we can actually distill that information and get some understanding as what's coming in, where it's going, what's happening with it. We're very mindful that clawback is really important to everybody, so that we can have an understanding, what are those numbers, what do they look like, and what does that mean for us as an organisation. So we're going to be picking that up as well. So if you can look out for that, as I say, from the beginning of December, that will start to filter through onto the website, but certainly by the end of this year, the IFS report should be available as well. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Christopher.
you. So unless there are any questions, thank you.
Do we have any questions, Ruth?
I just first of all want to say thank you so much for this report. It's really informative, really helpful, and I think our enforcement team has improved beyond all recognition since I was elected in 2018. And so thank you for the work you do. I particularly liked what you were saying in the report about needing to educate and inform the public. I had a call only this morning telling me that nothing was being done about a certain enforcement action, which I'm not allowed to talk about because we're in public. And I said, I can assure you there is work being done, but it's confidential and it's happening in the background. And I think as members, it's really helpful for us to be confident that we can say to the public that we know something is happening. Because as you say, it's not exactly a responsive service. These processes have timelines, they take time, and they're legal processes, and we need to inform and educate the public about that and assure them that we are taking action. And so I find this really, really helpful. So thank you so much, and for all the work you've done and for making it much more, making the information available to the public, for the things that you're proposing to put on the website around the Section 106 as well, I think is really helpful. So thank you. Just one question I had. In your table of enforcement actions, you don't say anything about appeals. Is that because there weren't any? Are you going to planning to report on how many appeals have been received or pending decisions or that kind of thing, or not?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you first of all for your comments. I certainly will feed them back to the team. They do work extremely hard, and it's just about balancing and prioritising. But I think the important takeaway is that we are doing really important work. We are making such a difference, and we keep going. In terms of reporting appeals, absolutely we will do that. I don't want to revisit some of the conversations and the sentiments around PINs. That really is outside our control. But the information and the reporting on new appeals as they come in, that will form a part of this information that we share. Also included is in the report are the notices that have been served. They're not easy to achieve. They do take time. You'll notice in amongst that there's an injunction as well. A phenomenal amount of work, prosecutions. We are working really hard, and it's not easy to deliver, but working through the procedures, and it's making sure we get them right. We don't want to expose the organisation to any kind of procedural impropriety, and that all forms part of that. So as any new action comes through, that will be reported, and the report that I've popped in the tape in the report will be updated on a quarterly basis as well.
Thank you.
Okay, and the outcomes of any appeals will be shared.
Thank you, Christina. Councillor Mantle.
Yeah, I'd like to support what Councillor Brown said. I think that enforcement is an extremely important part of the work of the department as far as the public are concerned. But the specific question I had to ask, we're talking about Section 106, we're talking about the district council's part of it. Is there any way we can get that corresponding information out of other people, particularly the county council?
Okay. The work of the county council is outside our remit, but
Yeah, I know.
what I can share is that just in this last week, myself and my colleagues across the district, so that's the planning enforcement managers, we've been having conversations about setting up a network so that we can share information, work together, and just see kind of share good and best practice so that we've got that strategic county reporting capacity as well. And that will go back to RTPI also.
Because I think a lot of concerns about whether the county actually spend Section 106 monies that we collect on their behalf.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I certainly agree on that last point from Councillor Mantle. Right. Sorry, Councillor Brown.
I just wanted also to respond to Councillor Mantle because their overview and scrutiny are appointing a task and finish group on Section 106
Good.
specifically to look at the spend. So that is also happening.
Excellent. Very important. Yeah.
Okay. No more? Right. That report is for noting. We'll move on to 11, which is exclusion of the press and public. There are none in the room, but for the benefit of anyone who may still be online, I shall read this out. Sorry. So to consider passing the following resolution that under Section 100A of the Local Government Act 1972, the press and public be excluded from the meeting on the grounds that the following report will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraph 7 of part 1 of Schedule 12A of the said Act as amended. So I am moving that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ruth Brown. You moved so
Happy
quickly.
to second.
Thank you. So maybe move into part 2. Oh, sorry, we need to vote, yes. If you could vote for the proposal, please.
Chair, that motion's carried.
Thank you. I almost forgot the voting bit. Can we now move in to part 2, please? we're back. Thank you. I don't know if there's anybody's out there still watching. At which point I would like to close the meeting. The next meeting of the PCC is on Tuesday, the 3rd of December. And thank you very much for your patience and indulgence. Enjoy what's left of the evening. Thanks, Ian.